Good Sunday morning and welcome to WGN TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. There's just 3 weeks left in the spring legislative session and still so much to get done. Lawmakers at the Capitol still need to approve a budget. Some are trying to revive efforts to help the Bears make a move to Arlington Heights. And incoming Mayor Brandon Johnson, well, he's got a long list of requests from the city of Chicago. Well, this week I spoke one-on-one with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker about all of that and more. Governor Pritzker, thanks for joining me. Lots of things to talk to you about. I want to begin with the abortion question. Obviously, for now, the fate of the abortion pill, mifepristone, remains with the courts. Illinois is doing what it can. My question is, if ultimately the Texas decision is upheld by the conservative chain of courts, what will Illinois, or what can Illinois do about it? Some states are looking to stockpile the drug. Would that happen here?
Well, we've provided advanced funding for providers so that they can get a hold of mifepristone and have it in their cabinets, in their stockpile, to make sure they can provide it. Importantly, we're going to do everything we can to provide the other medical abortion drugs that are available, and to make sure that we've got our clinics available to people. We are an oasis, as you know, in the Midwest and for the country, here in the center of the nation. And we're going to continue to do that in every way that we can.
On the Illinois assault weapons ban, again, working its way through the courts, you've expressed confidence that ultimately you'll be victorious about this. But first of all, if you're not in the courts, what do you do? And if you are victorious, what do you do with regard to law enforcement officers who suggest they're not going to enforce it?
Well, they obviously would not be able to keep their jobs if they're not going to enforce the law. The fact is that the law today in Illinois is that assault weapons have been banned. So too have been switches and high-capacity magazines. We expect it to be upheld, but obviously we're going to follow the law in Illinois if the Supreme Court rules otherwise. I would think I would find that surprising and extremely disappointing. There are 8 other states, well, now 9. Washington State has joined us in banning assault weapons that have already done this, and it's been in place for quite some time. And if they believe in precedent and they believe that they shouldn't be disruptive of existing law, they really shouldn't touch this.
On the issue of migrants coming to the city, we're seeing that more in the headlines lately. Asylum seekers in Chicago, including children, sleeping on the floor of police stations when shelters are full. Mayor Lightfoot asked for $50 million from the state, got less than half of that. What, if anything, can and will the state do to improve those conditions for migrants who are awaiting their next step?
Well, let's start with the funding, which is hugely important. When you talk about conditions, it really is dependent upon the shelter that can be provided, the services that can be provided, and those all cost money. The federal government, in fact, I just got off the phone with them about this, has dollars available. They haven't had enough available, but they have dollars available. We've applied for every one of those dollars that are available to us. And we hope to receive those over the next month or so. But we did everything that we could and continue to provide the funding necessary. My Department of Human Services really took over quite a lot of the provision of services for people because the city couldn't get it all done. But we've got a good relationship between the folks on the ground in the city and the folks in my administration to provide the services necessary. We put kids in school. We made sure they had shelter. We've now provided rental assistance for a lot of folks, and we've worked on the White House to see if we can't get work permits for people to finally get them to work so they can pay for their own shelter, food, and health care.
If all that weren't enough, you got about 3 weeks of a legislature. You with the small task of passing a budget during that time. I'm just sort of curious, your Department of Revenue Director, David Harris, urging caution that there will not be the same kind of surprise increase in incoming funds this year like we've seen during the COVID days. No doubt the state is headed in the right direction. You talk about that, but lots of groups are lobbying for limited funding.
Well, that's the case every year, as you know, whether we have surpluses or we don't. People are, have their hands out. They're looking for more. There are a lot of things that we need to fund, and we need to fund to a greater degree than we already have. As you know, I've been very focused on increasing education funding at every level, because that's really an investment in our future, our economic future, the future of our children. And of course, maintaining the level of healthcare that we've been providing as best we can, even without the federal emergency in place. We want to be able to give as many people access to Medicaid as we can. So there's a lot that we need to get in. Here's my priority. We're going to balance the budget. We're not going to do anything here that takes us backward. We got 8 credit upgrades. We've been doing a good job. I heard that from bond investors and credit rating agencies when I went to New York just the other week. They're very happy with what Illinois is doing and the trajectory we're on, and we're not going to change that trajectory. We're doing the right things, and we're heading in the right direction.
Let me expand on education just a bit. Obviously, very important to you to expand preschool and college tuition assistance. I get that you and the Democrats see this as imperative, but how will that fit into this year's budget plan? Can you get it done in a few weeks?
Well, I proposed it in my balanced budget that I put forward in February. There really hasn't been a lot of pushback by Republicans or Democrats about the investments in early childhood, in higher ed, and frankly, the greater investments in K-12 education too. We have a teacher shortage. We're putting money forward to try to cover that teacher shortage, hire more folks, especially in those districts that have been most ill affected by the defunding that occurred over the last 20 years. Look, we're going to make progress on that front, and we can fit that in. That is a high priority education. There are an awful lot of things at the edges that I think are we may have trouble funding if we don't see, let's say, excess revenue or surpluses like we have in the past. And I will say, I think that, my Department of Revenue director is terrific, David Harris, a Republican former state representative, somebody who's honest as the day is long. And I've talked to him regularly, really, throughout his term, my term in office. And he tells it straight. And I think he's right. We should all be cautious, because I think there may be a recession coming. Certainly, we saw a slowdown in the overall economy announced this morning to 1.1% national GDP growth. So we need to be careful.
Chicago Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson got a very warm welcome in the state capitol last week. He's taking with him State Senator Bastiano Zayas as his deputy chief of staff. You pushed back on his financial transaction tax, but he's also looking for state help with a possible real estate transfer tax, changes to the school funding formula. Any negotiation room on those plans?
Well, it's not something that, obviously, as governor, I'm not the one in the General Assembly and the committees that are talking about this, but I do not think we're going to see a lot of movement on the tax front. But I do think that there are a lot of things that we're doing at the state level that will be very, very helpful to the new mayor, to the city of Chicago. Always we've focused on providing the resources necessary to fight crime, to make sure that they've got, violence interruption programs that are well funded. We're providing literally tens of millions more dollars than ever before each year to help do that. We've got to address that issue. That's certainly one of the top ones, and the mayor talks about that as well. And then, of course, education funding. We're increasing education funding. That will help CPS. So there's a lot that's coming to the city, and we're going to be as helpful as we can. Look, as Chicago goes, so goes the economy of the entire state. We need to make sure we're supporting businesses across the state and job creation and people and working families. But it turns out, as you know, that the majority of the economy of our entire state is in the Chicago area. And so the mayor of Chicago and I and the legislature all need to work together to make sure we're growing our GDP.
As you know, new proposals percolating around Springfield regarding the Bears. Marty Moylan shepherding that around. You've been very adamant that there won't be any major taxpayer money for Chicago Bears to put roots in Arlington Heights. What's your reaction to his proposal?
Well, I know everybody's looking for solutions to try to, make sure that the Bears do well, but my view is that the Bears are a private business. They're a profitable private business, and they can go like the Cubs did, for example, with the rework of Wrigley Field. They can go find private financing to do the job here. I'm a Chicagoan. I would love to see them stay at Soldier Field, but it is their choice about where they'd like to go. We're not going to stop them from going, but the state providing financing for a new stadium just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Congratulations on getting the DNC here in 2024. I know every time President Biden saw you, you were in his ear about it. But my question here is, Illinois is, listen, all but guaranteed to go for Biden in 2024. How do you see that message playing out with other blue states or less blue states that Democrats need to pick up who say, it would help if it were here?
Well, it's a new day when it comes to, where the convention should be. 50 years ago, it mattered if you had a convention in your state to getting the vote out, to getting the message out in the state. The fact is that now this is, as you know, it's being streamed, it's online, it's on television, it's being shown worldwide. The fact is you could do this anywhere, really, and have a positive effect on voters in swing states. But remember that Chicago is the center of the blue wall. And so even though you might think that, and it's true that, Joe Biden won Illinois by 17 points and Hillary Clinton won it by 16 points, the fact is that Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, those are all states that we have to win as Democrats. And Illinois and Chicago are the largest of those Midwest blue states. And we all work together, Gretchen Whitmer, Tony Evers, Tim Walz, the governors of those states, to make sure that the convention was coming here. It is going to be helpful to the Midwest to have it here. It shows that the president and the Democratic Party recognize how important the Midwest is. But I'm also just overall very, very pleased. It's going to be a great development for the city of Chicago, bringing dollars into the city, into the state, bringing 50,000 people. So I'm excited about that.
Governor, final question, 2024 presidential election. Polls are clear that people don't want this Biden versus Trump rematch. I know you're on the president's campaign advisory board. My question to you, are you going to hit the campaign trail in the coming months on behalf of the president? And how do you drum up interest in a race that people generally don't want to see happen?
Well, I'm going to do everything I can to help the president and the vice president win re-election. They deserve it. Think about what they've gotten done for this country and where we were as a nation at the end of Trump's term. We had an economy that had fallen apart as a result of COVID-19. We had people who were dying everywhere in the country, more than 1 million people as a result of COVID-19. And it was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that made sure that those vaccines were distributed everywhere in the country. People, as a result, have gotten healthier, or they've been saved, frankly, from either ending up in the hospital or dying. And revive the economy. Think about what was happening to the economy. We saw a steady downtread, to an abyss, really, during Trump's term. And it was Joe Biden with the American Rescue Plan that really brought our economy back. And so, now we're talking about maybe a mild recession. We've had some inflation, which is never great, but it's much better than a great recession or a Great Depression that we could have seen. So I think that the country sees that Joe Biden's got a lot done. Think about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill that got passed, the CHIPS and Science Act. Those are all great for bringing manufacturing back to the United States, for fighting climate change, injecting dollars into manufacturing overall. Our economy is much better off as a result of the work that Joe Biden's done. And one last thing. Joe Biden is probably the most empathetic president that we've had in my lifetime. This is a man who has demonstrated how much he cares about working families, and he's worked on that. I mean, the policies that he's implemented have shown you that. And I think people understand that he's the right person to keep this economy and keep this country moving in the right direction. In contrast, we've got the leading candidate on the Republican side is indicted and probably going to go to prison.
Governor Pritzker, I know you got a lot on your plate. Thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning. I appreciate it. We covered a lot of ground. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Paul.
And coming up next on WGN-TV Political Report, moving toward an elected school board in Chicago. Advocates weigh in on what district maps could look like as lawmakers face a big deadline in Springfield. Don't go anywhere.